Everybody, very big welcome to the Almost Macho podcast. My name is Dhiren and I am joined by my favorite co-host for this podcast, Preet Sagar. Preet, big welcome.
Thank you, Dhirain. So excited. We're finally getting to do this. It's been a long time in making and, a lot of scheduling and technical issues that we've gone through. It's good to be here finally.
Good to be here, man. And today's episode is actually a very special episode because we're talking about fathers and what it means to be a father in 2025.
It's interesting because recently, I think you mentioned that you had attended Zakir Khan's talk show, the stand-up comedy where he talks about father. It was Papa Yaar. I also incidentally attended it in Toronto. Phenomenal for anyone listening. If they can, please attend. It's heartwarming. Go with a box of tissue paper, lots of laughter.
And also heartbreaking.
What were some things that you took away from there?
Preet, I think I was telling you off air that मैं show तो देख रहा था, but as I was watching the show, I think I went into therapy because the things that he was talking about really took me back to me growing up with my dad. And I'm sure you will relate to this. अपन के घर में, it was less love, but more tough love, So my dad would always be very upset with me. He would always be asking me to do better. And so as Zakir was talking about the things that he was going through, it really took me back to my time. And there was a particular moment in time I was laughing, and then I started crying because of what he said about his dad. And it took me back to a very specific incident with my dad about my dad showing up to a particular spot. I was in trouble and I called him and he showed up. And as soon as he showed up, and instead of saying to me, "Are you okay?" he started beating me because he was so stressed and he was so tensed that he actually beat me because of how nervous he was. And that was like I said, I went into therapy, man. That's how powerful that show is. So it's not stand-up comedy only, it's also therapy.
Yeah, I like that about him. He takes you back in the moment. And I think some of those moments when it resonates with you, deep down, it helps you heal internally. So I hope it really helped you not only see that scene from the past, but also heal a part of you.
Everything he talks about. I know you and I love Zakir. We love his sense of humor because I think we relate to him. We're all millennials. We relate to his sense of comedy, but also the things he talks about. We lived that. So a question for you, Preet, talking about fathers. What's your fondest memory of your dad?
The fondest memories that I can think of when you ask this question is I can imagine this. We were sitting in a living room, me, Raj. Vidhi was not born till that time, my brother. And my cousin Puneet was there with us. And this is a time where we started playing Ludo as a family. So almost every weekend, we would sit down with the Ludo board. It would be me and Puneet against Raj and my father. And that competitiveness, because I had never seen the play or fun side of my father. He was always the authoritarian or yeka. Or when he would come into the room, usually sannata, everyone's quiet. The moment where Zakir Khan says that even though he is so old, as soon as, he's back in Indore, he's watching TV on the show. When he hears his father coming in the scooter on the gate, he all of a sudden switches off the TV, picks up his book and reads. That's like the reality of it, right? When our father would walk in, we were like, everyone's quiet, trying to gauge how his mood is. And if his mood is good, then we can be in a lighter mood. But if he is in that gambhir mood, then everyone stay away.
Yeah,
that's all it was.
I remember that.
How about you? What was your fondest memory?
Yeah, my dad is in that he's alive and he's very happy as he is. But back in the day, he was very different. He was the life of the party. He was loud. He would crack a lot of jokes, and he would really lighten the mood. And every party that we went to, I remember him being the center of attention. And really, that's my fondest memory with him because every party we went to, we would sort of be in the center, and dad would be cracking jokes, and dad would be telling anecdotes and picking on people, and just because of that, we all had a great time. That's one fond memory of him. The other fond memory of him is him and his penchant for long drives. He loved long drives. So at 10 at night, 11 baje raat ko on a Friday night, he'd take me, of course, my mom and my sister would get into a car and we'd drive to this place called Shahama because we were growing up in Dubai tab. So the longest drive possible was Shahama, and Shahama ke baad there was Abu Dhabi. So for him, a good family bonding time was getting in a car, driving to Shahama, talking, listening to songs, buying cocktail juices, and then coming back all the way. Of course, we would then by then sleep, pass out in the back of the car on the way home. But those are my fondest memories of him, man.
Yeah, that brings me back. I think there was a thing with all Indians at that time, going for a drive and going for Faluda. I don't know if it was that's what cocktail drinks you guys were drinking, but we used to go to a place in Sharjah, a nook, and incidentally, all his friends would hang out over there and everyone would just order Faludas. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, no, this is not alcoholic cocktails. My dad wasn't. My dad quit drinking when I was born, which is in the 80s. But this was like fruit cocktail, So those banana and apple, and basically just a typical Dubai fruit cocktail. It's thick, sugary, and I wonder why I was so heavy when I was younger. It was probably because of all the cocktail juices and all the sugar that we used to have late at night.
All the love that he showed you in terms of food.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. That's probably another fond memory of my dad. I still credit him for that. For us, breakfast, in fact, all meals were to be done as a family. There was very little exception to that rule. अगर खाएंगे तो सब साथ में खाएंगे. So breakfast साथ में होता था, lunch साथ में होता था, dinner साथ में होता था, and there was no TV. Us sitting around the table, and these are very heavy breakfast, very heavy lunch. आ रहा है और कोकी बन रही है सिंधी घर में, and then lunch में 2 भाजियाँ, salad, रायता. So it was always a very happy affair for my dad. I think for him, bonding with his family was always around food, and I've taken that from him. Even today, when I want to make sure that I'm spending quality time with Shweta and my daughter Prisha, it's around food. So that'd be another fond memory, man. Food.
Fantastic. There was this one question that pops to my mind that, what I find interesting about Indian culture as a parent, like how fathers are cool outside, but inside the house, they're a different persona. I don't know. It's just like a flip that's like a switch that flips completely. As soon as he enters the door, he turns into a father, then a boy or a dude. And all of a sudden, he has to be strict regardless, like not letting the guard down. I don't know if this is something that everybody experiences, or is it specifically to Indian household, or I'm guessing Asian household.
नहीं, मेरे घर में भी same होता था. When dad used to show up, and like you said earlier, everybody would want to gauge dad का mood क्या है आज. And usually it was a very stern mood. And I think as you say that, I'm thinking and harking back to my time. I think that for fathers in our day and age, it was a lot of stress outside and stress inside. And stress inside, having a wife, having kids, figuring how to deal with all of them. I think for them, at least for my father, it probably just was easy to put on a stern face and deal with, things as they came. I also think that fathers maybe didn't know how to operate any differently. They saw their fathers. At least I'm talking about my dad. My dad saw his dad probably, and that's all they knew. Come home, be strict, put your kids to make sure they do homework, put them to bed, and then maybe just take a deep breath and chill. Is that the same in your house?
I remember stories from my father's childhood that my cousins and all share, that when my grandfather would enter, all the 4 brothers would go quiet. Like, they don't speak a word among each other. And that hierarchy followed even my father, who was the youngest among 11 siblings. And his elder brother would come inside the shop where my father was selling, or he was sitting with his friend. As soon as he entered, my father would go complete numb quiet. And I think that's what he follows, and that's his expectation of us, or the way he wanted to command respect in some way, right? But it brings me back to that, to the first part where you said that it was a troubled time when you called your dad, and the first thing he did was shout at you, scold you, and beat you. And that is something that I brought in the initial stage of my parenting with Rishi, because that's all I knew, to be strict and everything. And when Hetal pulled me aside once and told me that this is going to go on in his mind forever. He will never call you in terms of trouble. So that's why we switched that. Like, Rishi only gets scolded if he is disrespectful. He doesn't get scolded. Zero shits given for anything that he breaks, any mistake he makes. And I keep reminding him, Hetal and I keep reminding him again and again, that Rishi, doesn't matter what happens. Anytime you're in trouble, anywhere, any given point of time, no questions asked, we will come and rescue you.
Yeah.
Nothing. So he doesn't have to have any fear. Because I remember whenever I used to get trouble, I had a physical fight with a few gangs in Sharjah at that time. And I was just too scared to call my dad.
मार पड़ेगी.
I like,
हाँ,
इधर भी पिटूंगा उधर भी पिटूंगा ऐसे अच्छा सर नीचे रख के चुपचाप घर चले जाओ. So I had got beaten up. I went home, I cried and just kept it quiet.
But as you're talking, I'm thinking, for us, of course, it was not a pleasant experience to be, get shouted at. I've already fallen into trouble and then I'm getting more shouting and I'm getting more beatings. But I think for them, it was an expression of love. It was so much love. It was so much care. So that was the only way they could express that love, right? And you asked the question about why what was it like for our fathers? I think for them, that was in my opinion, that was the only way they could express love. They knew no other way of expressing love. And so that was the first thing they did. And maybe that's probably why they came home always angry, always strict, always stern faced, never a light mood. Maybe
that might be a case that men can't be vulnerable or they can't show the stress.
Oh, certainly. 100%. 100%.
I think that would be a bigger thing. I remember when I was going through my anger management issues, I would come home and I would, everyone would be in a great mood. And my internal voice would be like, Preet, it's okay, let go, just be chill. But my identity had become that angry young man at that point. So I wouldn't allow myself to laugh. Like, mera bhi thoda bahut mazak uda leta, I would get even more pissed off. Right? How dare you tell me this? Because I'm the man of the house. And that time, a lot of time, there would be displaced angers and everything, right? So I think that's what the identity that they carry forward. And I think we became stress busters, man. I mean, it's great that you're flipping the script into tough love, but I think we were the stress busters for them at that time. Bahar ka jitna stress hai. I didn't know. My father didn't work out, or he didn't have anywhere to take his stress off and come in, or any rituals.
Yeah, that's a good point. My dad wasn't a sportsman either. He wasn't an athlete. I know he did a lot of hard work. He worked long hours, but didn't look after himself in terms of his physical health as much. So probably that's also one more reason why all of that would get pent up and stay in the system. And something I learned in my coaching with Mark, my coach, he talks about this idea that the masculine, and I'm not talking necessarily about genders now, but masculine is all about logic. It's A to B, B to C, C to D. And because the masculine is so heavy in us men, I think our fathers were always looked up as problem solvers. And so in my marriage, I've felt this for the longest time. I thought I was responsible for every problem and for the solution of every problem. I had to solve every problem. I've come to realize that's not true, but it's just the mindset that they grew up with, and then I think I grew up with, that I have to solve every problem. So I suspect my father would spend a lot of time just solving problems, and he'd get irritated and exhausted solving problem after problem, not letting that emotionality out, not sharing, not being vulnerable like you were saying. And that's probably also the reason for why they grew up being so strict and so macho, and that's what they portrayed in my house as well. That's what he did.
Yeah, and on a lighter note, I don't think so Shweta mein kuch problem hai hi. Problem सब आप में ही होगा. Definitely इसलिए आपको solve करना होगा.
120%. 120%. There is no problem.
Problem solve कर रहा. Fathers were interesting. I've only seen my father vulnerable 2 times in my life. I can count it. One, when my grandmother had passed away, I had seen him tear down. And second time was when we were financially having a lot of issues. So we had to be moved to India, me, my mom, my brother, and my sister. And my father came to drop us at the airport. And that time he hugged us. And I just expected like a hug. And you know how kids are. I was in 9th grade. I just like, yeah, dad, okay, bye. I'm going to India. And all of a sudden I could see tears in his eyes. And I'm like, oh, bye, Saab. And I think, yeah, that was the most heartwarming and shocking side that I had seen of my father. I think that's the facade that we keep, right?
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking how much of our fathers we carry, and it brought a question to my mind, Preet. For you now, as you are, and everything that you've learned so far in life, what does it mean to you to be a father?
I think I'm father in training because everything that I had seen my father do or act is sort of, I wouldn't say outdated, but doesn't work with the new generation. So I'm trying to be the hybrid version or almost like a transition generation of the fatherhood, where inside my heart I'm that desi father. just go questioning my authority rather than just being curious. And the other side is the cool dad who wants to hang out with him, who wants to teach him. So we've kind of navigating between this two. Of course, the boundaries are very strict. There will be times where Rishi, I flip the switch much faster. When my father used to get upset with us, and he would get angry or we would get beaten up, there was no approaching him. With Rishi, I would be strict. Like I would say, Rishi, don't do this. And next minute, I could be tucking him in bed and kissing him goodbye. So he knows that if I'm angry or if there is that, it's temporary emotion. It's nothing to do with him. How about you? How has that changed? Being a father of a princess, it's completely different.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's different when you're a father to a boy and you're a father to a girl. I can completely relate to what you're saying because that's probably how my father felt. Because I was a really naughty boy growing up and I've done some shitty things. But it is very different being a father to a daughter. And funny that we are talking about this, I used to always think that my father loves my sister more. It was always a thing in my head. And it is just different to being a father to a girl and being a daughter dad. There is so much softness in being a father to a daughter. There is so much vulnerability that I've learned to bring out. And I could also, and I have had my moments where I'd fight with Shweta about her bedtime and her food routine and her protein intake. But you come to realize, wo sab ek jagah. But when you're being a father to a girl, she requires you to be soft yet firm. She needs to know that you can take care of her. Or at least in my case, I would like for my daughter to know that I can take care of her. But at the same time, I don't want to be a strict father. I want to be a loving father, an emotionally present father, an emotionally vulnerable father. Again, something I learned in my coaching is anger is not equal to aggression.
Yeah.
You have all the right to be angry, but you don't have the right to be aggressive, or you shouldn't be aggressive. And I think our fathers could never detach the two. I'm learning to understand that anger is not equal to aggression, which means that if I'm angry, and I've had this with her, I've said to her, listen, sweetheart, I'm angry at the moment, and this is why I'm angry. Now she's 3, so she's probably not putting everything together just yet, but at least the foundations are being put to say that I know dad's angry. But if dad's angry, it doesn't mean that he's going to get into bear mode, or he's going to hit me, or he's going to shout at me, or he's going to get upset. He's angry, and he's able to express that. And yeah, man, that's what it for me is my journey as a father so far. And अभी तो बहुत कुछ सीखना है, बहुत कुछ करना है, but that's where I'm starting from, man.
I love it. I have this running thing that I keep telling to my family, because my brother also, like me, has a bit of a temper issue. And I can see sometimes in Rishi as well. And I have this saying that I keep repeating, that all emotions are welcome, all behaviors aren't. So you can be emotional about something, but you still have to be respectable in your behavior.
But in that, between the two, there's a space. And there's a space where you can express your emotions. I don't think my dad ever learned to express his emotion. And I never saw him tell me, son, this is the stress I'm carrying, or this is what I've got on my mind. This is why I'm behaving the way I'm behaving. But I suspect that in today's generation, us as fathers, I would love to have that space. I'm trying and working on that with Prisha to be able to, for her to say, and I'll ask her, when I can see her switch off, if she's playing and she gets upset, or she loses, or she doesn't like something, she'll switch off and she'll walk away. And I'll go and ask her, are you upset? Are you angry? Did something frustrate you? My hope is that with those sort of questions, she'll understand there's room to express her emotions. She doesn't have to throw things or get upset, but she can actually express. So I love what you said. That's a fantastic thing to remember.
One of my biggest goals for Rishi was to be very attuned with his emotions. He needs to understand if he's feeling angry or not, because most of the time I realized growing up, I couldn't express what emotion I was feeling. It was either I'm angry or not angry. That's the only thing that I kind of realized.
Growing up, I probably felt the same. I only had 2 switches, angry and not angry. But you learn as you grow up, and I've learned as I've grown up now, that there's such a wide spectrum of emotions, And if we can start to learn to name them, that in itself makes us good fathers. And yeah, man, like that's a great share. There's a wide variety of emotions.
True, very true.
I have a question that I'm thinking about, Preet. because you mentioned your experience with Rishi, and I know because we've been friends for so long that both Hetal and you are great parents, and I know you guys take a lot of care and you guys have so many different conversations about what it means to be parents. But let's flip the conversation and maybe ask you to share the big vision. What is it that you'd want your kids to remember about their childhood?
For Hetal, it was she wants him to look back and realize that life with mom was one big adventure, like full of variety and full of experiences. Uh, for me, I would want him to feel the consistency and the security. I think him to remember कि भाई बाप बैठा है. Like a lot of times where she's a little bit reluctant to take any risk or he has that fear, I remind him कि भाई I'm here, and that's something that I do. With that said, we do a lot of playtime together, storytelling, rituals. I feel for me, there's more of consistent rituals of growth, personal growth. That's the journey that I want him to remember with me.
As you were talking, I was thinking, what do I want Prisha to remember growing up with me? What do I want her fondest memory to be? And I was saying earlier, right, Preet, to be a father to a girl is I have this responsibility of being the first man in her life. And I want to set the bar so high in every sense. Because when she goes out into the world, I want her to find the strongest man, the best man, not just from a financial perspective, not from a physical strength perspective, but from an emotional perspective. I want her to understand what it means for a man to be vulnerable, what it means for a man to be real. Man, I saw my parents and I see myself with my wife. We've been married 19 years. For the first 15 years, I didn't know what it meant to hold space for my wife's emotions. It would always make me so upset to see her upset. And I've come to realize that her emotions are her emotions. My emotions are mine, and there is a lot of space in between. And so I want Prisha to know that there is such a thing where a man can hold space and can hold that emotional safety net. So yeah, I want her to remember that. Of course, I want her to remember the playtime and the experiences. But for a girl going out into the world, I want her to have that strength that she doesn't need to have a man that's emotionally weak, you know?
I've heard about you and my story is similar. Like when we get married, we are like that strict men, don't be emotional, don't talk about emotions. And all of a sudden you're married to a girl who is vulnerable and comfortable sharing emotions. Like मुझे तो like ये तो कुछ भी बात यही दो चीज समझ. I think जो होता है सही टाइम पे होता है. I feel when I had Rishi, there was a huge change in my life that I went through. I wished I could have gone through that change earlier before him. It took me a few years after him to go through that change. But I'm glad, Prisha is meeting this version of her father, than the one maybe 15 years back, who might have not been that in tune with his emotions or expressive as you are right now.
There's a story between Shweta and I. It's now, of course, become a joke. हम लोग की नई नई शादी हुई थी. She had moved to Toronto. And so, of course, as it happens when you're cleaning stuff, things break. So, उसके साथ एक बार जो bathroom में soap dispenser है वो टूट गया. And Dhiren, being the younger version of Dhiren, flew off the handle, got upset, started asking her questions. कैसे गया इतना महंगा ये इतना वो? Because I used to live in Toronto alone. I lived in Toronto for about 10 years before she came into our house. And of course, that became a scene. We had a fight. We forget about it after a couple of weeks. After a couple of months, of course, we had gone and replaced that soap dispenser. It broke again. And this time, my anger had scarred her so much that she actually left the house. She went to a coffee shop and she calls me from the coffee shop. She's like, listen, Dhiren, I know you're going to get upset. I know you're going to get really, really mad. I want you to know I'm not at home. I'm outside. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've broken that soap dispenser. And I'm laughing and I'm saying this, but I regret that behavior of mine. I really do. It wasn't about the soap dispenser. It has never been. But it was the inability to share what I felt in that moment, whether it was lack of control, whether it was whatever that feeling may be. It was that needed to be expressed. But I never did that. But yeah, it was a funny story, sad, funny story to share.
I have a similar story with, I have multiple stories with Hetal, but one story with Rishi specifically, that we were talking and I had a spoon in my hand and we were at the dinner table and he did something and I hit the spoon and the plate broke. intention anger का भी नहीं था, but वो अभी भी वो याद करता है.
हाँ.
वो अभी भी वो, luckily, Hetal told me about it and asked me some questions, and we went through it, and I was like, it's nothing to do with him. I went that night and put my hand on his chest, and I told him, listen, Rishi, earlier what happened at dinner table was nothing to do with you. It was just displaced anger from work.
How old was he when you had this conversation with him?
Probably 5-year-old. 5-year-old. I remember in the garden's house. And he looks at me and he just started tearing and he said, thank you, Papa, for letting me know this.
Wow.
And I'm sorry you had to go through this and this thing. And since then, that has been my benchmark of what not to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to reach that stage ever, like we talked about, right? That where they can't approach us when something breaks or something terrible or troublesome happens.
I think my dad had a lot of displaced anger and he never got to share it. He never got to talk about it. I don't know if he had the opportunity, he had the spaces, but I know, Preet, you and I, we're so particular about sharing these experiences because these aren't necessarily failures. Yeah, they're life experiences. And I don't know how many other men that we know in our friend circle that may be listening to this podcast that probably have a similar story arc. But it's a message to share that it's okay. We've all been through it. We're all gone through it. We're all learning. No one's got this figured out, right? And this is why we're doing this, to share these vulnerable moments and make it very clear that being a father in a South Asian household is not as funny as Zakir makes it. It's also shitty. It's also very emotional. So, yeah, man.
I have this one question that I keep asking, and it's an interesting side of me, or an intriguing side of me, that I want to see how the future plays out. Like, as a parent that you're parenting, how would Prisha turn out to be, 20 years, 30 years down the line? All the kids, like Rishi was born and all the friends had kids together, and everyone has different parenting style, right? So what is one aspiration or few aspirations as a parent that you have that he takes from you or she takes from you, and few aspirations or how as a person she would become 20 years down the line? What qualities do you think?
Of course, I want her to be emotionally vulnerable, strong and vulnerable, to know that there is enough and more room for her emotions. I also want her to be confident. I want her to be not scared of the world. I think, talking about the flip side of things, we're talking about women in South Asian culture. I've seen so many examples where women are not allowed to do things, or girls are not allowed to go out late at night, or girls are not allowed to, ride a motorcycle, or they're not allowed to go to university abroad. And that is not how I want to raise Prisha. I want her to have all of these experiences, because the one thing I've come to learn, I know this question was about her future, but I just want to take a step back and say, man, that's something else that I've learned. As parents, we don't control them. We don't own them. We're just their guides. Our role here is to facilitate their journey and their time with us. They have their own life. They'll make their own mistakes. They'll make their own better decisions, bad decisions. And jo bhi hai, it'll be hers to make. But I want her to be able to own those decisions, not shy away from them, not regret them. Whatever she makes on her own. Can I help her? Of course I will help her. But to be able to do that, she has to be absolutely and certainly confident in herself. She needs to trust that she can't make a wrong decision. That's the aspiration I have for Prisha. How about you? What's the aspiration for Rishi?
Yeah, something that I think I lack. Not lack, but I think I'm working on myself. The question I'd asked you sometime back, like, are you your biggest fan? And you were like, yes, immediately.
Depends on the day, but yeah.
It depends on the day. Yeah. I want Rishi to be his own biggest fan, like absolutely comfortable in his own skin. Live wholeheartedly, be always grateful, financially be educated enough to know where to invest, and be able to understand the rat race and have a sense of belonging. I think if he does that, I tell this to Rishi a lot of time, that what my limitation is going to be his platform. Like, what my ceiling is going to be his platform to grow, right? So he can jump from there. Earlier, like you mentioned, right? I thought as a parent, I need to provide everything to him. But now it's switched to, I just need to give him a platform in a free country, well-rounded parenting, and lots of love, and understanding that he will always belong, right? And he will always be loved. Like, love doesn't have to be earned. it's something that is default because he's just there as a human.
I grew up with this one condition that it had to be earned. Good student, good grades, good at something. I love that line, man. Love doesn't have to be earned.
I've been reading this book by Morgan Housel. It's called Same as Ever. Very interesting book, and it kind of brings me to my next question is, what do you think will remain the same as a father? Like, what qualities will remain the same that you've seen in your father, which you are following, and which might not change, like as the whole styling of parenting changes?
If you were to ask me, what is that I want to remain constant as a parent? It's my ability to show up for Prisha, whatever the matter is. If it's 2 a.m. in the morning and she's crying as a child wanting milk, whereas when she's 13, 14, 16, 18 out at a party and she's had an accident at 2 in the morning, I want to be the one that shows up. I think that I want to be the one thing that is constant. You were saying this earlier, right? Like, love doesn't have to be earned. She needs to know that this is absolutely 100% unconditional safety, guaranteed. I want to put like a money back guarantee on it. That's the one thing that I want to remain constant.
That's fantastic.
What do you think will remain for you as same as a father now and then later?
For me, from Zakir Khan, coming back to his thing, he's like, when he's going, he's in trouble or something, he has some issues with his work, and his dad gets on a train and he says, "Ghabarana mat, tera baap baitha." That thing is going to be constant for generations, right? That's not going to change. Having a father, like right now, the question comes up a lot of times, like, well, how would life be different if my father was still alive? For me, it would be that sheer confidence ke baap baitha hai, right? No matter what condition he is in, and somebody who is going to give you unfiltered answer. Like mom is very much emotional answer, right? But dad also knows how to cut through the noise and give you without bullshit. And you know that this guy means well in whatever condition it is.
It reminds me of a story. So I was living in Canada and my parents had come to visit me, and whenever they'd come visit, I'd rent a car, and somehow the side mirror broke. I think I touched a lamp post, reverse karte hue. Something he shit, kaise samjhaun. And I looked at my dad, I said, "Dad, ye ho gaya. Dad bola, "Dad, main hu na, you'll figure it out." And he was so calm. And I remember now that he's always been, especially after I grew up, after a certain age, especially after I moved to university, every time I called him with the problem, "Main hu na, we'll figure it out." And sure enough, we figured out a way to put that mirror back, such that the rental guy would never know that mirror was broken.
This is so good, man.
It's just magic in knowing that.
I feel it was that quota na, chal yaar, main sambhalta hu abhi iske baad. Like,
yeah.
You have to get through that quota faster than anybody else. I think that flip, right? Like for Hetal, for example, as a girl also, she has more respect in her household or more say right now after she got married. Like there was this flip where her mom and dad listened to her. Till that time, it was just a kid. So I think for a man also, I think there's a rite to passage. After some point, you're like, yaar, ye barabar.
Yeah, I remember that moment very clearly. I remember that moment. I was dating Shweta back then, and I got caught. This is late at night. I got caught. I was on the computer chatting. We had ICQ back then. I was chatting on ICQ, and he walks into my room. And हमारे घर पे नया internet, probably 2-3 years हो गए होंगे with internet. Yeah, and he caught me, and he started to get upset, and I also started to get upset for the first time. And I know भी मार पड़ने वाली है. So usually मार पड़ते से, what would you do? You would run, or you take the beating. But this time what happened was I put my hand up. So I stopped him and I pushed him back. And I think that was the moment when it flipped for him.
Yeah.
कि यार बस इसके बाद I cannot do this. बच्चा बड़ा हो गया, लड़का बड़ा हो गया. So that was an interesting moment that you took me back to, that flip.
I never had that moment with my father. डर नहीं किया कभी. But with Raj, I had that moment. कि राज और मैं एक दूसरे को मारते रहते थे बहुत, and I used to be the stronger one. But there was this one time in the 12th grade where he became equally strong, where I'm like, bhai, abhi chill kar.
It'd be really interesting to hear this from you, Preet. I know you said your dad passed away very young, and you're the oldest in the family. I'm curious to ask, did you ever feel that you took on the father role after your father passed away? And what was that like?
I started almost modeling my father a lot. Anger, strictness. And I think that was my way of showing love for my brother. Raj was one of the most shaitani hai. Like when we had gone to Bali, a night we went out clubbing and everything, and everyone came back home next day in the morning, like 7, 8 o'clock. For some reason, I get up very early and I go and do a head count. I don't know. I have this habit. I Ketal hai, Rishi hai. I go to the next room. Vidhi was there and Raj was missing. And I'm like, Raj kidhar hai? And Vidhi's like, oh, aaya hi nahi kal raat ko. And maybe luckily we found him in the afternoon in the swimming pool. He went off to sleep. Might have been intoxicated in the night. But he's also, I remember fighting and we had a very huge fight at the tail end of this holiday for us. And that's where I kind of realized. So this time, so to answer your question, yes, it has been quite default to become the father figure. When there is a gap, you kind of fill it up. And this time when I was partying with Raj and one of his friend Amit, who's a close friend of mine as well, he said, "Ke bhaiya, ab ho gaya." And I'm like, "Kya hua?" He's like, आपकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी अभी वो रोल छोड़ दो क्योंकि ही कुड सी कि मैं देख
सच अ ब्यूटीफुल लाइन. बड़े भाई थे, अभी आप बड़े भाई नहीं हो, आप सिर्फ भाई हो. And it's almost like I felt like you dropped, at that moment, you probably dropped a very big load off your shoulder. Yeah, I think that is such an interesting flip, right?
Yeah, and sort of an equalizer also. I was talking to Vidhi also recently that I'm not your big brother now, I'm just your brother. You know, you have equal right to tell me anything if I'm going wrong. And we are equalizing. And sab apna apna dekho. I have somebody else to take care of. Like you know, you have Prisha, I have Rishi to take care of.
Preet, it's been a phenomenal conversation, my friend. As always, it's time to wrap up this podcast. For everybody that's listening and watching, look out for the show notes. There's some amazing goodies in there for you. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, Doreen. It was fantastic. See you guys in 2 weeks.